Coming up, who are the contenders and who are the pretenders in the National League? This is Locked On Now MLB.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
Welcome into Locked On Now MLB and welcome to Opening Day 2022. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. The baseball season starts today and all of the teams start with a clean slate. So who can actually win it in 2022? Our Locked On MLB hosts have you covered with everything you need to know about the teams around the National League as we start this new baseball season.
Let's go around the league.
The NL West has belonged to the Dodgers for about a decade at this point, and that isn't set to change anytime soon with more headliner signings in free agency and one of the best lineups we've seen in recent memory. Who could possibly keep up with them? Our Locked On hosts from the NL West try to answer that question.
Are the 2022 Dodgers contenders or pretenders? Well, not only are they playoff contenders, not only are they World Series contenders, but they also are the odds-on favorites to win it all this season. I'm Vince Samperio of Locked On Dodgers, and this is why the Dodgers are contenders this year. It starts with the lineup, a lineup that nearly boasts a former All-Star or former MVP at every spot. And even though they lost Corey Seager, they picked up Freddie Freeman, who won the MVP in 2020. The runner-up that year, Mookie Betts, the Dodgers right fielder. The 2021 batting champion, Trey Turner, he's at short. Two 2021 NL All-Stars in Max Muncy and Chris Taylor will be moving around DH second base, Chris Taylor in the outfield. They got one of, if not the best hitting catcher behind the plate, and it's supplemented by a former MVP trying to find himself in Cody Bellinger, one of the most clutch hitters in Dodger history with Justin Turner. And then Gavin Lux will be filling in here and there. Their pitching lacks a little bit in the starting pitching department, but they still have Walker Buehler, Julio Diaz, and Clayton Kershaw, three proven starters. And it leads to a bullpen that's going to be pretty good with newly acquired Craig Kimbrell closing out games now after Kenley Jansen went to the Braves, and a bevy of arms ahead of him with Blake Trinan, Brusdar Graterol, Alex Vesia, and Caleb Ferguson returning from injury there to help out. Not only do they have that, but they have Dave Roberts, one of the best managers in baseball, and a front office that is always willing to go out and make trades to make this team better throughout the year. So that is why the 2022 Dodgers are contenders.
Sorry if this is heartbreaking news to anyone, but you probably need to hear this. The D-backs entered 2022 as playoff pretenders. Miller Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks here. Now let me tell you why the D-backs are playoff pretenders. I don't think the argument is that complicated. They won 52 games last season, won the worst marks in franchise history. They set the all-time road losing streak record. This is not a good ball club right now. Now they have some interesting pieces and names on their roster. Zach Gallen, Ketel Marte, can Dalton Varsho continue that second half breakout? There's some very interesting players on this D-backs team. There's some good players on this D-backs team, but overall, do they have the talent to make a postseason push? Not really. Now, does that mean this is just going to be another terrible 50-win season? I'm not saying that either. This D-backs team can be competitive. They could maybe make a run at one of the wild card spots, but do I think they're going to grab one of the wild card spots? No. I think this will most likely be a team playing playoff spoiler down the stretch, and if we're lucky, we'll be entering September while watching the D-backs still play baseball, because we know most of the time once September rolls around, the D-back season ended months ago, but this September, they might keep the race just close enough where we have to keep paying attention to the standings, but they're probably, in the end, won't make the postseason.
Coming off a season in which they won 107 games, the most in franchise history and the most in baseball last year, the San Francisco Giants are absolutely contenders in 2022. Hi, this is Ben Kaspick with the Locked On Giants podcast. Oh, and by the way, they won the National League West away from the Dodgers, who had won it almost 10 years in a row. So nobody really saw the Giants coming last year, but this is an underrated roster, and they utilize their players in an underrated way. They do lose some key pieces like Buster Posey and Chris Bryant, But on the pitching side, they look really strong with Logan Webb, breakout ace, returning. He's under club control for many years. They bring in Carlos Rodon, they bring in Alex Cobb, and they bring back Anthony DeSclafani and Alex Wood. It's as good of a rotation as there is in baseball if everybody's healthy. And again, the question is the offensive side, where their big addition was Jock Peterson. Well, their biggest addition was Jock Peterson. So that'll be the question, but I think that they're going to mix and match their way to, again, hitting a lot of homers. They did lead the National League in home runs in 2021, and they're definitely going to be contenders in 2022.
What's going on, guys? Javier Reyes here, host of the Locked On Padres podcast, coming at you live from a very special room with a very cool background, if I do say so myself. And I'm also being joined by a very cool dude, and that is my buddy Stitch. And why is that? Why is that? Because we have to answer a very important question. That question is, are the San Diego Padres in 2022 contenders or pretenders? And I got an answer for that, of course, as I always have an answer. They are contenders. Yes, I know that they collapsed historically this past season, all right? It was awful. It was terrible. Fernando Tatis Jr. is out for 3 months, but they have a great rotation. They just made the acquisition of Sean Manaea for very little, in my opinion, in that trade, and he's expected to be the 4 or 5 starter. That leaves people like Blake Snell and Yu Darvish. If they can bounce back, would it surprise you? Absolutely not. They got Joe Musgrove, and if they could get Mike Clevenger back off the expected IL stint pretty quickly, he's viable to be a contributor as well. And you have some interesting back-end upside pieces in the starting rotation with people like Chris Paddock, people like Ryan Weathers, and new acquisition Nick Martinez. Maybe they knew something about him. That's why they signed him over. And top pitching prospect Mackenzie Gore. I know the offense is going to be a little bit rough, but Manny Machado is a king, and he's going to be awesome for that offense. Trent Grisham can have a bounce-back season for sure. And Ha-Seong Kim, an elite defender. If he can just be an average offensive player, that might be low-key an X factor for this Padres team. So yes, Tatis is hurt. Yes, there's a lot of issues with the team, but one extra playoff team this year. And hey, the Giants, they have to go down a little bit, right? From 107 wins to, I don't know, maybe something a little bit more tangible. So absolutely for the whole season, guys, the Padres are going to be in on it. Luke Voit was a great acquisition. I'm telling you, there is hype for this Padres team, even if it wasn't as high as it was last year. And hopefully we're going to be talking about it for months to come here on the Locked On Padres podcast, guys.
Rock on Rockies fans. I'm Paul Holden, and are the Rockies a contender or a pretender? Well, I'm going to say they're closer to contender than pretender, but we will see. Paul Holden here from Locked On Rockies, telling you about giving you your quick playoff outlook right now before first pitch of opening day of 2022. The Colorado Rockies are an interesting team. The Colorado Rockies are not as bad of shape as some people will lead you to believe, but the Colorado Rockies still have a ton of question marks to answer. And that adds on to playing in arguably the toughest division in baseball. So for the Rockies to be contenders this year, a lot of things have to go right. And the things have to start with an improved offensive performance from the team, and the bullpen needs to be better. The Rockies didn't bolster the bullpen a ton. They made a couple of changes, but are leaning on some younger arms and to break through and break out. The Rockies also have to take on the Giants, the Dodgers, and the Padres for a good chunk of the season. So things have to go really well for the Rockies to be contenders, but I don't think they're in that label of pretenders. I think the Rockies are in a much better spot than you think. And hey, if the Rockies play good baseball, could be a benefit of that expanded playoff series. I'm Paul Holden. I'm bringing you I'm bringing you Rockies coverage on the Locked On Podcast Network every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow along at LO Rockies or with me at Paul Holden 33, and let's go Rockies.
The NL Central is a bit different. It's definitely up for grabs this season. No clear dominant team. Everyone is looking at a chance to jumpstart a playoff run by winning the division. Locked On MLB hosts from the NL Central tell you which squads can come out on top.
The 2022 Milwaukee Brewers are not only contenders in the NL Central, they are World Series contenders. I'm Dominic Cotroneo of the Locked On Brewers podcast. Let me explain why the Brewers are a legitimate chance to make it to the World Series for the first time since 1982. First of all, the pitching staff. What more is there to say about the NL's best staff, maybe the best in all of baseball? Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, Freddie Peralta at the top of your rotation. You've got Devin Williams and Josh Hader at the back of your bullpen. Breakout stars like Jake Cousins and Aaron Ashby lurking and ready to take over some huge innings this season for the Brewers. The pitching is there. Everybody says pitching and defense is how you make it deep in the playoffs and make it to World Series, the Brewers certainly have that covered. And if you get a bounce-back year from Christian Yelich like everyone is expecting, look out not only for the National League, the Commissioner's Trophy could be finally coming to Milwaukee.
Opening day is almost here, a day that we didn't know that would actually get here after a long and tumultuous offseason, and I'm here to tell you why the St. Louis Cardinals are contenders for a playoff spot in 2022. My name is Lucas Smith of the Locked On Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. St. Louis Cardinals were a playoff team in 2021, largely part and due to a 17-game winning streak in the last month or so of the season that propelled them to that second wildcard spot before losing to the Dodgers in the wildcard game. And this team, in my opinion, got better in the offseason, re-signing TJ McFarland, re-signing Adam Wainwright, re-signing Yadier Molina, adding pieces like Corey Dickerson, Albert Pujols, as well as the starter Steven Matz. They're also going to get Dakota Hudson back from injury. While they might not have the big names in the starting rotation, this is going to be a solid rotation for 2022. I believe that the bullpen has enough pieces to make it work as well, with Giovanni Gallegos, Genesis Cabrera, and even Jordan Hicks anchoring the bullpen. And the offense, in my opinion, could be one of the strongest parts of this team. You've got two of the best corner infielders in the game in Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt. Combine that with one of the best outfields in all of baseball with Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson, and Harrison Bader. This offense should be exciting to watch in 2022. I think it could be a favorite for the division, but at minimum, this team is a contender for a playoff spot in 2022.
Locked On Cubs family, it's opening day week. Grab your cocktail and celebrate. And guess what? The 2022 Chicago Cubs are contenders. What, say you? That's right. I'm Andrew Bellison, host of Locked On Cubs. Listen, they had mega problems last year after the deadline. They traded away their core. The bullpen went away. Well, guess what? They shored up the rotation. They brought a ton of arms in the pen, both some youngsters and some proven vets. Still got some injuries down there they're dealing with. Wait till those guys come back. And listen, they hit the ball last year. They're going to do it again this year. They've got even more depth. Dark horse, Clint Frazier. He's got 40 home run potential when healthy. Fingers crossed. This is a solid Cubs team that's going to surprise in a good way. Your 2022 Cubs are contenders.
Are the Pirates a pretender or a contender heading into the 2022 season? Well, to put it simply, I'm not going to pretend like they can contend. Hey, this is Ethan Smith from the Locked On Pirates podcast, and I am asking you all to come tune in to my team this year. And honestly, even though they are a pretender and they won't be contending this year, it's going to be a very fun time to be a Pittsburgh Pirates fan for a lot of different reasons. One of those reasons being simply they have a lot of prospects coming up. There's a ton of prospects in this system that are going to be very good. There's a ton of them that are ready to be up here and be ready to play, like Diego Castillo, O'Neill Cruz, Rowenzi Contreras, and more. So I think it's going to be a very fun time. I think things are going to be very fun in Pittsburgh this year. So everybody should be on the lookout, because maybe next year or the year after, the Pirates could be contenders again, but they are pretenders heading into the 2022 season. I'm Ethan Smith, the host who does the most, and I will see you on the flip side.
This edition of Locked On Now is brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on the market. They're made with 100% real chocolate. They're low in sugar, low in carbs, low in fat, but high in protein. They have tons of different flavors that change all of the time, so there's something for everyone. They also have new puffs, which are protein-infused marshmallow, which sound delicious. If you head over to Built.com, you can use our promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Just use that promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order. The defending champ Atlanta Braves hope to take down the NL East, but it won't be easy with some of the other teams reloading within the division. Can the new look Mets get healthy enough to challenge Atlanta? Or what about Bryce Harper and the Phillies? Our Locked On hosts go through all of the possibilities.
The Atlanta Braves will most certainly be contenders in 2022. I'm Jake Mastriani, host of Locked On Braves, and coming off a World Series championship, the Atlanta Braves are looking to repeat, and GM Alex Anthopoulos has put them in a position to do just that with some big offseason moves. Even though they lost Freddie Freeman, face of the franchise, he was able to replace him with Matt Olson, perhaps just as good, if not better, both offensively and defensively. Plus, the Braves are set to get back maybe the best player in all of baseball, in my so humble opinion, Ronald Acuna Jr. The lineup is stacked top to bottom. They could have everybody hit 20-plus home runs in this lineup. The starting pitching, while it has some question marks beyond the top three, is still very good, and there's a ton of depth there. The bullpen may be the best in all of baseball as you add Kenley Jansen, Colin McHugh to what was already a very good stable of relief pitchers in A.J. Minter, Tyler Matzik, and Will Smith. This is one of the best teams in all of baseball on paper. They just proved last year that they can get it done, and there's no reason to believe they won't be contenders again.
The Miami Marlins are all in for 2022. Absolute contenders in this NL East. I am your host of Locked On Marlins, Peter Pratt. Yes, British host. No jokes, please, about Marlins fans. They are not necessary. Why the Marlins in 2022? Let me tell you why. Does any other team, does any other rotation have 5 aces? Yes, the Marlins have 5 aces. Absolutely ridiculous pitching depth for the Marlins. They also have 2 aces sat in AAA and probably 1 on the IL. So many arms for these Marlins. They are going to pitch themselves into contention in this NL East. Absolutely. What's the offense saying? It's not been good the last few years. How are we looking? The bats are looking strong. Added some power bats, some thump, no doubt about it. And you've also got Jazz Chisholm sat there primed for an absolute breakout season. I've got Jazz pegged for a 30-30 year. That's 30 bombs, 30 bags, by the way. So Marlins looking good. Catching spot has been addressed. It was the worst spot in Major League Baseball last year at catcher. Defensively and offensively, Stallings' move really helps the Marlins there. They've got more depth. If the Marlins are lucky with health, and they weren't lucky in 2021, if they can stay healthy, the pitching is looking so sexy. They are absolutely all in 2022, and I expect them to keep doing business through the year. Look to add to center field. Look to add to the bullpen. In the main, let's go fish.
Wow, is this a real question? Somebody wants me to answer if the Mets are going to be a contender or a pretender this year. Of course they're going to be a contender. This is Ryan Finkelstein, the host of Locked On Mets, and I cannot wait for the start of the 2022 season. Steve Cohen is all in. That's obvious. When you give Max Scherzer a blank check, when you bring in players like Starling Marte, Mark Canha, Eduardo Escobar, who just brings some veteran experience to the lineup, and then you cap it off with a trade for an all-star in Chris Bassett, this is a Mets team with a great manager in Buck Showalter that has World Series aspirations. Will they get there? We don't know just yet. That's why they play 162 games. But I'll tell you, if you're a Mets fan and you're not excited, I don't know what's wrong with you. This is going to be an incredible season. I'll have full coverage throughout the year with Locked On Mets.
Sorry to say it, folks, but the 2022 Washington Nationals are going to be pretenders in the contenders versus pretenders conversation. Hello, everybody. I'm Josh Neighbors, the host of the Locked On Nationals podcast. Here with the Locked On Now as we head towards opening day, less than 48 hours away as I am recording this. And the Washington Nationals, they're not trying to be a contender. They're not trying to sell themselves as something they're not. It's pretty clear that this is a rebuild. A lot of the parts of their 2019 World Series championship are now gone, although some parts do remain, and those key parts, they're trying to get healthy. On the pitching side, they'd like to see Steven Strasburg come back and get him back to full health. Have not seen that since the 2019 World Series, where he was the World Series MVP. They need to bounce back from Patrick Corbin. They need to see if they can get Joe Ross healthy and get more out of Eric Fetty. We'll see if they can get top prospect Cade Cavalli up and running in the majors. The lineup, well, could be pretty decent. They've got Juan Soto, acquired Nelson Cruz, still have Josh Bell, and they've got some pieces from last year that were pretty productive. They want to see how young guns Keibert Ruiz and guys like maybe Luis Garcia later down the line, Victor Robles, who's still pretty young, how they perform while they still have the star in Juan Soto. The focus will be on building a winning team that can attract him to re-sign, and that re-signing of Juan Soto will be a major focus. How do the Nationals A, get him to resign, and B, construct a team that will help them in doing so and continue to compete for championships here in the near future. For more on this Nationals season, make sure you guys find Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcast. You guys can find us also on YouTube as well. Find us on Twitter at LO_Nationals. You guys can find me at JoshNeighbors_.
The Philadelphia Phillies are absolutely contenders in 2022. There's no doubt about it. They're pretenders no longer, and that 10-year playoff drought, it's coming to an end this season. Hey, this is Connor Thomas from Locked On Phillies, and I'm just so zoned in on how good the Phillies could be in 2022. Look at some of the acquisitions they made. Nick Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber, some of the biggest bats in free agency available. Plus, they shored up the bullpen with some veteran additions and Brad Hand and Juris Familia. Man, this team is better than last year's team, and that team had the NL MVP in Bryce Harper and the NL Cy Young runner-up in Zach Wheeler. How is this team even better? Well, their offense is going to be crazy. It's no defense, all offense. They're just going to hit a bunch of dingers, and that's all it takes because they play in a bandbox in Citizens Bank Park. Man, it's going to be an awesome year to be a Philadelphia Phillies fan because this team is absolutely contending. And hey, they might just go ahead and make the playoffs for the first time in a decade. Cannot wait for this season to get started.
That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Now MLB. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you check out Locked On MLB and your team's Locked On podcast. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Now.